Hi there, I'm Mila Sipka, and this is the Apatros Review. Now, even though this is a regular review episode, I'm going to take the opportunity to pretty much tell you a little story from the badass days of my youth, concerning a rather strange operation that existed up until the year 2004 or so. Now, this is a story of a certain thing called the Liverpool Blackjacks, or actually I refer to them as Liverpool Blackjacks. If you lived in my area during the late 90s and early 2000s, you will have seen these tapes around. I'll explain it momentarily. Anyway, now when DVDs first came onto the scene in my home country of Australia in 1997, the VHS format was still king. I mean, they didn't stop making VHS and tapes until around like 2015, 2016. Actually, sorry, VHS tapes were stopped around 2005, but the format wasn't officially retired until 2016. That's when the last VCRs were made. I've still got like 3 VCRs in my collection, all working. Yeah. It wasn't until around 2005 when video stores began disposing all of their VHS tapes in a great mutual sell-off around that time. So in 2005, you go to any video store selling all their VHS tapes. I distinctly remember going to literally every video store I knew and buying up as many of their VHS tapes as I could afford, and I pretty much converted most of them to DVD. This was shortly after my father's death, and my stepmother was still in the habit of not allowing me to own movies of any type. That in itself was a pretty long story. And by the end of 2005, not a single video store was renting out VHS tapes in any capacity. However, there was one place located in St. John's Park, about 10 minutes from where I live by walk, 5-minute car ride, that still had VHS tapes up until 2017. But that was a private store, and when it eventually became the very last video store in the Fairfield area to remain in operation, I knew the time was near for my last chance to buy some tapes. This is a few years before I started shopping online. That private store was also the local blackjack dealer. Now, I use the term blackjack as a personal euphemism to describe pirate copies of movies. So if we're having a conversation, refer to a movie DVD as a blackjack, then you know I'm talking about a pirate copy or a bootleg. And I've been in the habit of buying pirated DVDs from that place, but only for films I had no chance of being able to watch during the theatrical distribution. I don't have any of those pirate discs now. I used to do that like back in the day. Only for films I couldn't actually watch in the cinema. Now, when that store closed its doors in very late 2017, the owner tossed his entire remaining stock of VHS tapes into the nearest dumpster, and that was the end of it. But anyway, anyone who was into buying VHS tapes during the very late 1990s and early 2000s, or who lived in the Fairfield area at the time, in southwestern Sydney, Australia, would remember going to places like Stockland's shopping mall in Prairiewood, or even Liverpool, the Australian Liverpool, not the British one, and noticing from time to time some market stalls selling VHS tapes of various movies. These tapes had covers that looked rather amateurish in their design, like some kid was designing VHS covers using Photoshop, with some peculiar blurbs and also fake OFLC ratings that even had their own consumer advice, as was common in VHS tapes in the 90s, that listed things that were not actually present in the movie itself. The actual quality of the tapes was usually mediocre, even by VHS standards. But at this point in time, these tapes were in many cases the only way for the movie fans in my area to obtain home video copies of films that were otherwise not available legitimately. For example, George Romero's Dawn of the Dead was not released on the DVD until around 2005 from Umbrella Entertainment. Romero's Day of the Dead, one of my favorite films, was then only available for the rather roughish-looking forced video DVD, which wasn't exactly common, but it was around. Peter Jackson's Bad Taste wasn't allowed in Australia uncut. The cut version was released legitimately back in the late 1980s on VHS by CBS Fox. I actually had the tape. And the story behind that release was one of the many factors that led to the downfall of the ridiculous Queensland Classification Board, that outfit preventing Queenslanders from watching horror films the rest of Australia was permitted to see. Escape from New York didn't see a DVD release until the original Studio Canal skeleton disc appeared in 2004. Both The Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 were also getting the DVD releases around this time period. Evil Dead through Big Sky Video, and Evil Dead 2 through another skeleton disc from Studio Canal. Hellraiser and Hellbound Hellraiser 2, while originally permitted in uncut form over here, were originally released on VHS in the 80s by Roadshow, but those tapes were out of circulation, and the Australian DVD releases didn't appear until the mid-2010s, or at least early 2010s. So if you owned these tapes, I would wager you would have kept your Hellraiser tapes the longest. There were also tapes for the first 3 Nightmare on Elm Street films. There was some from Wanda Carne, what else? Night of the Living Dead also had one. a few Godzilla films. Even Monty Python's Flying Circus had the whole series was on VHS. Even Peter Jackson's Meet the Feebles was there as well. And yeah, interesting. Now but the problem with this is that these tapes, all the tapes of that outfit, were unauthorized bootlegs. So these are bootleg tapes. And I'll just show you the backs. These are the last two tapes I have of these bootlegs. I've already converted these two to DVD. And to look at the inside, actually I'll put this on the labels intact. These bootleg tapes usually had like homemade labels like this. Now tapes themselves, the video tapes are actually cheap quality, they're not like high-end stuff. So chances are these things would pretty much, they weren't really good quality. In fact, when I watched my bootleg tape of Dawn of the Dead back in the day, in fact, the index picture for this has free covers that I kept, which the tapes are no longer, I no longer had tapes, and the back covers are lost, but the front covers I actually still have, which you'll see on the index picture. This is the Death Wish one. You can see it's pretty much the same sort of thing. So these were these are pretty common back in the day. Now, to be honest, I have very little information on the outfit responsible for issuing these tapes on the Australian market. Bootleggers don't exactly advertise by mainstream channels, and the internet wasn't exactly, as reliable as it is today. But they were in business until 2005. They even had a physical brick and mortar store outlet called It's Showtime directly opposite the Liverpool train station. I've been there a few times back in the day, like around 2004 I was there a few times. But that store was shut down by the police in late 2004. I say that because I remember passing by on the day that the police were inside to pack the VHS tapes in boxes. I was passing by and saw them in there. Anyway, so that's personal recollection there. For a while, you could still see the market stalls popping up in usual places, but once 2005 came and went, I never saw those guys around again. Or for the special branded bootleg VHS tapes, which were all priced at $7 a tape. So basically, for $7, you could buy each of these. Each of these were like $7. Oh, for actually, to be honest, I mean, all the places I went to, $7. But this tape actually imported from a different state because I bought these like a couple of years ago, and this price is actually $12.50. Interesting. I think they priced it differently in certain places. I don't know, but from all the times I bought them was $7. Yeah. And these tapes were in circulation for a couple more years, even showing up in legit video stores at the time as rentals. In fact, the Video Easy store that was at Prairie with the Stocklands, which is now a medical center, even had the Hellraiser tape from that catalog on their shelves. I actually had a copy of that tape. I remember the manager was puzzled when I actually pointed out to him that that was actually a bootleg. he was pretty interested by that, but my mind's vague on those exact details. I don't remember that part too well. Anyway, long time ago. Of course, that Video Easy shut down in, I think it was 2009, something like that. Now, copies of these tapes can still be found on eBay if you look long and hard enough. I used to own many of these bootleg tapes in my collection, but when those particular films had their legit DVD releases come out, I disposed of the particular bootleg VHS. At the moment, I only have these two. These are the only examples I have of those bootlegs. I've already converted these to DVD, so they will live on. Yeah, that's kind of interesting story. But eventually, I'm going to dispose of these tapes. I will keep the covers because those discs they're pretty much the DVD equivalent of these anyway. Okay, I just wanted to basically tell you a little story about these bootleg tapes. A little story that anyone who was in my area in the late 90s, early 2000s would have encountered these tapes. In fact, those market stores also sold a few other things too, not just bootleg tapes. They also sold a bunch of grey market DVDs. So, in fact, one of them even sold Manhunt. Around 2004, 2005, I remember seeing that market stall in Stocklands, same one, and like they would rotate every now and then different shopping centres. I even remember seeing them in Westfields in Liverpool, Parramatta Westfields. They were also in Liverpool Westfields as well, and they also had Manhunt in their they were selling. But this is after Manhunt was actually banned in Australia. By the way, I should point out for anyone who thinks that it's illegal to own. Well, look, in Australia, when something is refused classification, it means that it's not allowed to be sold or import. I mean, it's not allowed to be advertised or sold openly. But you can still import them in through mail order or internet stuff, as long as it doesn't have something illegal like CP or snuff filmmaking. Then you can pretty much have it. It's not really a problem. But in New Zealand, if you have, for example, if I walked around the street with my copy of Manhunt in my collection, if I was walking around with that, the police can't stop me because I'm not selling it or anything. That's my personal copy. But in New Zealand, if went outside with Manhunt in my collection, I would be arrested and put in jail for that. New Zealand is a shit government. So is Canada right now. Yeah, but the people are good. Yeah. Okay. I hope you guys enjoyed that little story. I just wanted to a little bit of tell. I was uh, yeah, kind of interesting story. Yeah. Okay. Hope you guys are staying safe. Now, if you have any questions, hit me up in the comment section. I'll be happy to answer. Hope you guys are staying safe. Take it easy. And that's it for this review. See ya.